While thinking about what the Ohio State defensive line can be in 2022 and who might stand out, there are two names that come to my mind, and these two guys can make a crazy dynamic duo. They're JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer. Why do they stick out? What can they be in 2022? I'll tell you right here, and you can only hear it on Locked on Buckeyes.
You are Locked on Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Buckeyes for the Locked on Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Tuesday, July 19th in the year 2022, and I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked on College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. On today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about one thing that will stick out across the entire D-line in 2022 and also discuss how this unit stacks up against other D-lines in the Big Ten and around the country. But first, there are two names at Ohio State. On the D-line, they play the same position, and they stick out whenever we talk about what the D-line can be, who will stand up, who will step up in 2022. Those names are JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer. JTT and Jack Sawyer are two guys, same recruiting class. JTT ended up committing on July 4th and was a later arrival to the Buckeyes than Jack Sawyer was. And one thing that JTT said about the players once he got to college is these guys are strong. Now, I cannot say the quote that he said verbatim because there are four-letter words in there. And, well, we're trying to keep this a clean program. But these two athletes, and I say athletes on purpose, they bring something special to the Buckeyes. We got a glimpse of it in the spring game. But I do think starting week one against Notre Dame and then throughout the entirety of the season, these two guys are going to start and they're going to be a dynamic duo that the Buckeyes won't only be able to see for 1 year, but at least one more. We'll get Sawyer and Tuimoloau on opposite sides of the defensive line, and it's going to create so many nightmares for the opposing coaches and the opposition as a whole. Think about this. So we have talked about Jim Knowles, and it's been a while since I've gone in depth about Jim Knowles' defense and what we'll see and the different wrinkles that we'll see there. But there's going to be a hybrid linebacker potentially, well, not potentially. There will be a defensive end who is in a two-point stance occasionally. Sometimes he'll drop back in coverage. You got a little bit of that in the spring game. I saw Jack Sawyer do that. I believe Caden Curry did that. I don't believe JTT did. I think Javonte Jean-Baptiste is one that did ultimately draw back in coverage as well. But when you think about that, that's a certain skill set. Not every defensive end can be somebody that can be lethal in the pass rush game, the run stopping game, and even dropping into coverage. That's not easy. A lot of guys need to get down, three-point stance, get their leverage, get their get off, because that's their bread and butter. But with JTT and Jack Sawyer, do they have the speed you want at that position? Three-point stance or two-point stance? Absolutely. Do they have the quickness off the ball? Absolutely. Do they have the strength, which I think is one of the biggest keys and one thing that gets lost in the sauce? I've been saying that phrase a lot lately. Expect to hear it a whole lot more. One thing that gets lost in the sauce in all of this is that we forget how strong you need to be to play defensive line. I think that people say, oh, they're coming to Ohio State. They're going to come in, be ready to play. Not everybody is ready to play right away. And primarily a lot of the reason that's the case is because a lot of guys, they're not strong enough. I mean, JTT, one thing he said last year, and I already said it, but he talked about how strong the guys were and how strong they are at the college level. This ain't no joke. This ain't no walk through the park. It's not like you and your girl are going for a walk on the beach, feet in the sand to enjoy the sunset. This ain't that type of deal. If you don't come ready, if you don't come strong, if you don't come with everything you got in all the strength that you've been hitting them weights all off season and still doing some weight training and weightlifting during the season, you're going to get ran over. And I do think these two guys, they have the strength. I do believe Sawyer's up to like 265, maybe 270 right now. I mean, he looks like he is just doing push-ups for breakfast, man. I mean, he is just walking around looking like just a brick house. He is strong, but JTT is the same way. I've also seen clips. Now, you've heard me say a lot about Caden Curry and what I saw him do in high school with my own two eyes. Even at one of the games in 2020, it was number one versus number one in 6A with 1 in 5A, two top 25 ranked schools in the country at the time. I was freezing myself, man. I don't do cold weather. I was out there watching that young man play, and I'm like, I hope he goes to Ohio State. This was during his junior year. I hope he goes to Ohio State. So I do a lot of – I try to watch as much high school football as I can, and if there's a Buckeye out there, I'll watch him as much as I can as well. But with JTT, I saw him a lot via the high school film where he was at linebacker depth and the quickness and the ability and the agility that you need at that depth and being 4 to 6, 7 yards off the line of scrimmage. He had that in high school. I don't think he lost it. Now, granted, different skill set. He's practicing every single day, but I don't believe he lost that at all. And one thing that I mentioned earlier, I want to reiterate once again as we close up this first segment of the show. Remember that 2-point stance I mentioned? And how you need guys that can be able to be a pass rusher or a run stopper or be able to set the edge or drop into coverage, being able to be in a 3-point stance and 2-point stance. The weird thing is, both of these guys can do that. Both of these guys can be that guy. 2-point stance or 3-point stance. They both can be a hybrid linebacker. And if you come out and you automatically think hybrid is Sawyer, the next thing you know, you look to your left where JT Tuimoloau is, and he's in a 2-point stance. Buddy, that's going to confuse some people. But imagine this. What if they're both in a 2-point stance? Or imagine this. What if all of a sudden you think, well, the guy who's in a 2-point stance is always going to drop in coverage, or occasionally, next thing you know, the guy on the other side of the line, whoever's not in the 2-point stance at that time, drops into coverage. Trying to do a pre-snap read and post-snap verification is very difficult when what you think is going to happen based off the lineup is not happening. You can confuse things at the D-line, confuse things with the linebackers at the second level, and confuse things at the back half of the defense as well. Buddy, things start up front. And I can't wait to see these two guys go smooth off in 2022. I think the entire unit can go off and be better in 22. And one thing sticks out when thinking about that. What is it? I'll tell you next right here on Locked On Buckeyes. As the sun comes out and small businesses are back in business, LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier to grow your team. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the people you want to interview faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know? Every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Which NFL stars move the betting line the most? Starting July 18th, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18th on Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. So yesterday, did a fun time talking about the Ohio State defense, the things we'll see for them in 2022, and kind of just going through, kind of debunking a myth about Jim Knowles. I'm not knocking Jim Knowles as a player, as a coach, or anything. There's just been a thought out there that is true to a degree, but not fully true. Go ahead, check the last segment of yesterday's show. You'll get that, and you'll get to see Jay just really having a good old time talking about football and just sharing a fun opinion. But one thing that sticks out with this unit last year, over the past couple of years, is when I look at the unit, are they fully healthy? Now, when I say healthy, you might say, Jay, well, they don't have the injuries and they're not nicked up and dinged up and all those things like other guys where you're missing 2 starting D tackles, 1 starting DN. You're one of your backup DNs is out. Like, I'm not saying that level of healthy, even though the Buckeyes have seen players, Haskell Garrett being one of them, who was in and out of the lineup due to injury his last year at the Ohio State University. So I'm not saying healthy in that way, but I have been one on the record here numerous times discussing something seems off. Something looked off while discussing what we saw when the Buckeyes literally just stepped on the field. Remember last year after the Natty? Talked about it with Jeff Hunt from the Ultimate Ball Network. Talked about it here on the podcast. There was one thing different about Georgia and Alabama's players defensively and the defensive line, and it wasn't simply just they're better. It wasn't that. But strength-wise, healthier, were they in the best shape that they should have been for that moment? Absolutely. And there were numerous times the Buckeyes D-line, I'm just going to say it once again, it didn't seem like they were in the best shape of their lives, and it showed on the field. Now, could that have been a contributing factor as to why the Buckeyes coaches played so many guys on defense? Possibly, but I still think that was one of the moves that the coaches made last year that hurt the Buckeyes during the season, especially on defense. Now, offense did a little bit. I was rewatching part of the Nebraska game from last year. A little side note. And all of a sudden, I look up. Matt Jones is in the first quarter. Now, I completely forgot that there was a game that DeJuan Jones did not start. Forgot about that. But my first thought was, oh, here we go again. First quarter, doing a little rotation on the O-line because you just can't get things right. But then I quickly remembered that, this could have been the game DeJuan Jones didn't start. I only kind of had that thought because the defense, I could have played, you could have played, your mama could have played, everybody could have played because the coaches said, hey, we're just going to put you out there, have a little fun, go do this thing, and figure this thing out as we go. This Buckeye defense, I do believe, is going to be in the best shape of any D-line we have seen over the past few years. I don't even think really solely it's on Coach Mick Mariotti, who has been under, I would say, fire scrutiny, been criticized for the way some things he's been doing and the way the team looked last year on the field. I honestly think a lot of it's the mindset. No matter what Coach Mick was doing in the offseason or does during the season, no matter what he's doing with the strength and conditioning program, a lot of it starts with the players, man. A lot of it starts with them. A lot of it starts with them being dedicated, them being in tune, them being players that were out here saying, man, I just gotta be locked in right now. I gotta be ready to go right now. And if I'm not ready to go, if I'm not locked in, the coach can look at me and simply say, well, what's the problem, Jay? And I'm saying, well, I don't know. I just don't feel like going. Now, hopefully you don't say this out loud, but you may think, well, I'm just not feeling like going, so I'm not going to go hard right now. I don't know. But one thing I do say is this, and I've read articles, 11 Warriors, Letterman Row, all the different sites out there that are writing stuff about the Buckeyes. A lot of them are just simply writing a lot of articles about the D-line and defensive line play. And sometimes the mindset of these players creeps up and is exposed. And you might sit here thinking like me, like, we rip Mick Mariotti a lot. I won't say I try my best not to, but I do think there was a lot of criticism that I could have said about him. But we ripped Mick Mariotti a lot in the strength and conditioning program. And there were some times it should have been ripped. But what we didn't rip and ask was, are these players really mentally ready and mentally locked in and in tune with what the Buckeyes want? I believe the D-line is going to be that way. The interior, Jerron Cage, Teron Vincent, Tyleik Williams, I mean, you're going to have quite a few guys in there. You could see 4 or 5 guys rotating on the at D tackle. Probably 4 guys at D end. I wouldn't expect Tyler Friday, coming off of an injury, to come back into that unit. I wouldn't expect Caden Curry to get a lot of run with the D ends, especially with how I project and think Tuimoloau and Sawyer will play. Notice I didn't say much about Zach Harrison. During tomorrow's show, Ryan Roberts from Rise and Draft Scouting will be back with us, NFL draft analyst that he is, and break down what he sees when he watches the film on Zach Harrison. And you might agree or disagree. I think a lot of you will agree with what Ryan has to say about Mr. Zach Harrison. But the mindset really sticks out with these guys, and this makes me think, I've been holding this story for a while, to my days playing football. So I played high school football at Lawrence Central High School, the same high school that Kyle Guy, former NCAA tournament most outstanding player, I believe in 2019, played at the University of Virginia. Same high school he went to. I went there, but I was just a lot older than he is. And so I was there, played football all 4 years. And I remember I was talking to, thinking maybe my brother. I was talking to someone about two-a-days, summer conditioning, things of that nature. And during two-a-days every single year, freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, things kind of changed a tad, and I'll explain to you why. So freshman year, sophomore year, during two-a-days, I would lose easily in a 2-week span 10 pounds. It didn't matter what my weight was. It didn't matter if I was 230, if I was 225, which is probably mainly where I stuck around a lot of the time. I would lose weight, sustain it throughout the season, and then actually ultimately gain it back at the end of the season. Not all of it, but some of it. But I would lose 10 pounds during two-a-days freshman year, sophomore year. I remember this to a T. And what was that stuck out in that time? Buddy, I was locked in. Buddy, I was having fun. I was with my boys. We were playing ball. You couldn't tell us nothing. Yeah, we were sweating. Yeah, it was hot. Yeah, we were playing with a dirt field. It wasn't really dirt, but the grass couldn't really keep it up. So the field ended up turning into dirt when we were practicing football. Hey, man, I didn't care. I was having fun. And my mindset was, if I got to run these 400s during the summer conditioning, I'm a big boy. I don't like running 400s. But let's go ahead and knock these things out. If I got to run these 200s, let's go ahead and knock these things out. If I got to run these 100-meter sprints, I hate sprinting, not a runner, but let's go ahead and knock these things out. And during two-a-days, it's go hard, man. These coaches cussing you out, push-ups, hitting us left for 20 minutes. Didn't matter. I was all in, locked in. My mindset ultimately changed junior year, and then even my senior year, I was not as locked in as I was. And that 10 pounds that I would lose every year during two-a-days, a 2-week two-a-day span, didn't happen. Now, the nutrition was not what it is now, but ultimately a part of it was my mindset, and I started to blame, hey, man, Coach Fisher having us do these 800s. Man, I don't want to do that. I'm a big boy. I don't want to run that. But ultimately, it was my mindset, y'all. Like, part of it was my mindset. Even though the program changed, I still could have lost 5 pounds, 8 pounds. Could have done that easily in a 2-week span based off the running and the things that we had to do. But my mindset got in the way. I think that the D-line at Ohio State is going to be more like me as a freshman and sophomore and be mentally locked in and ready to go, and not be like me as a junior and senior and not be as locked in and be a blame shifter like I was in high school at certain points in time. The D-line is going to be locked in. I think they'll be ready to go. And I think that we're going to see some plays, some flashes from a lot of guys. We're going to be saying, man, I am so glad they are locked in. They're ready to go. And they're making this defense be the best defense it can be. How does this unit, overall D-line unit, stack up against other D-lines in the Big Ten and around the country? Well, I have Athlon Sports, their college football preview magazine, to my right. We'll go over their rankings right here next on Locked on Buckeyes. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we have been doing this for quite a while now, looking at the Athlon Sports College Football Preview Magazine and just discussing how each unit stacks up and ranks against other units in the Big Ten and around the country. Last time we discussed a position breakdown, well, 2 times ago, it was the tight end position. Well, Athlon Sports did not rank their tight ends across the country or the conference, so that's exactly why that was not a thing. So if you're saying, Jay, you missed tight ends, no, I'm just using their rankings, and they just didn't have them for me to utilize here on the show. But when it comes to the Ohio State defensive line, how does this unit stack up? In review, Ohio State has the best quarterback room in the conference, running back room, receiver room, and offensive line in the conference, and those rooms are loaded and talented. The D-line is not any different. The Buckeyes have the number 1 ranked defensive line via Athlon Sports College Football Preview Magazine in the conference 5-1 and 5-2. These are all opponents the Buckeyes play this year. Will be huge tests for the Buckeye offensive line when the Buckeyes play these teams. Number 5 ranked in this unit in the conference, Wisconsin's D-line. Number 4, Penn State. Number 3, Iowa. Number 2, the team up north. Number 14 is the Northwestern Wildcats, another opponent of the Buckeyes this year. When it comes to the national ranking, how this unit stacks up against other D-lines in the country, I'll go 10-1. Let you know how other certain schools stack up in this little exercise here and where the Buckeyes fall. You'll see exactly why I'm going 10-1 with this thing, and I'll explain a little bit why I think the Buckeyes fall where they are. Number 10, the LSU Tigers. Number 9, Texas A&M Jimbo's boys down there. Number 8, your Ohio State Buckeyes. The number 7 team in this ranking, Notre Dame Fighting Irish. 7 versus 8 will be a test for both offensive lines at week 1 in the shoe. I keep talking about it because I'm excited for that game. Number 6, the Baylor Bears. Number 5, Oklahoma State, the former school that Jim Knowles coached last year. Number 4, Pittsburgh. Number 3, Georgia, no surprise. Number 2, Alabama, no surprise there. And number 1, Clemson. You might say, Jay, Clemson fell off. Did they? A double-digit win season with a quarterback who really struggled last year and had a lot of injury issues. They lost their best defensive player last year in Brian Brzee. So they really – did Clemson struggle, or did they just not get to the natty, get to the playoff? Let's kind of reevaluate and recalculate how we're going to do these things and analyze what's going on the field. Clemson, number 1, not surprised there. But the one thing I want to highlight, who that has played consistently, started consistently at Ohio State, stands out, and you're saying, he's going to be a day 1 first-round draft pick for the next year in the NFL draft. Nobody. Who stands out? You say they're a surefire day 2 or second or third round pick in next year's NFL draft. Nobody. And so when you think about that, we're going to go more in depth tomorrow with the draft eligible defensive linemen at Ohio State and just discuss what they have done on the field previously via some film study. We're going to quickly realize that it's a luxury the Buckeyes are at number 8. It's a huge luxury. Because of the way this unit played last year, even the year before, it would not shock me if they were outside of the top 10. This is a surefire projection, and I think it's mainly because of a few guys. Tyleik Williams, JT Tuimoloau, and Jack Sawyer. I think those 3 guys alone are boosting Ohio State up this, and think about their talent. Some of y'all will say, well, we're going to use the recruiting rankings to put our roster together or depth chart together. Pause. Stop that. That's not an educated way to make this thing happen. Remember, we use our eyeballs. We use what we see to dictate what we project is going to happen on the field. The 3 guys I mentioned, I think, are moving Ohio State up this list, but I would not have been shocked if Ohio State did not have a top 10 unit and the defensive top 10 D-line room in the entire country. They're number 8. Okay, it's cool. But you got to move up the rankings next year to keep this ball rolling. Guys, we're out of here on this Tuesday. Tomorrow's show, Thursday's show going to be a lot of fun. Ryan Roberts from Rise in Draft Scouting, an NFL draft analyst for that site, will be back with us. Tomorrow's all about the D-line and draft-eligible D-line players that are at Ohio State. On Thursday, all about the draft-eligible linebackers and kind of projecting where they might fall in next year's draft, doing a little film study on them. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You could also send all of your emails to jstevens317 at gmail.com. Thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. Now is the perfect time to check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Know what your team is up against across the Big Ten with Locked On Big Ten. Every day, host Nate Dickinson and the local experts of Locked On take you across the Big Ten in 30 minutes. Make Locked On Big Ten your second listen of the day. Locked On Big Ten is just like Locked On Buckeyes. They are both free and available wherever you get your fine podcast and also on YouTube.